Hello everybody, welcome back to this tutorial. This time I'm going to be talking really quickly about how you can take your league and tweak it if you find that you have things about your league that you're not appreciating or not liking, or if there are some things you don't quite understand about how our league systems work. This is actually because of a ticket that came into our system, and I thought it would be a really good idea to not only explain how to be able to do some of these things, but show it off to all of you guys, so that way if anyone has more questions about this down the road, there's a video about it. So, the question came around that they wanted to know how to be able to do some not only statistic tweaking, but basically result tweaking for their league. They were finding out that the batters in their league were not quite exactly doing up to par for what they were looking for. And I want to be able to give you guys a quick and easy way to be able to do some quick tweaking in terms of whether or not you feel like your pitchers are too dominating or your hitters are too dominating in your leagues. We want to be able to give you guys all the tools necessary to be able to customize your leagues to get the results you're looking for. So if your batters are all batting below 270, they're just not hitting. They're not getting singles, they're not getting doubles. We can help you guys tweak those. The person had also brought up that basically pitchers were never being taken out after throwing even 100 pitches. Even if they're in comfortable leads in the 7th, 8th, or 9th innings, they're just not getting taken out fast enough. And that's a couple different ways we can go about trying to fix that one as well. Yeah, and then of course the result being that basically this person had a problem where the league was only having about 1 or 2 home runs on this individual team, players having about 10 to 20 by the end of the regular season, which is a big evidential sign that either their modifiers are off or the league settings are off. So we're going to show off how to be able to troubleshoot all of those for you guys here with this video, so that way you guys can hopefully go about making these changes. So I'm going to take this one step at a time in terms of what this ticket was talking about, and then we might cover some other areas that are going to help along the way. So, you're going to need to load up your league, whichever league you're having problems with. If you're finding that it has way too many strikeouts, way too many, no homers coming out of anywhere, players are really underperforming, most likely your issue, you're going to need to go to your league settings is where you're going to need to start off with first. And we're going to want to start off with the stats and AI page, which is right underneath of league settings. You can see I'm right here, league settings, stats, and AI. And this is everything with OOTP. When you make custom leagues or you want to do some tweaks to your league, this is where you want to start. Now, when you do historical playthroughs, when you try to play with older players and newer players combined, or when you try to do something custom, you're going to want to get familiar with this page and everything that comes on this right side especially. Some stuff on the left side, and we'll talk about that in a second, but the right side is going to be our bread and butter. That's going to be basically all of the league expected totals in terms of hits, doubles, triples, home runs, base on balls, hit by pitches, strikeouts, and the league average of BABIP, which is basically base on balls in play, or batting average on balls in play. My apologies. And basically, we want to make sure that some of these are balanced. If we find that our modifiers are too low, like triples at 722, that's a pretty low number for triples. That means the triples are probably not going to be hit as often. 1.000 is average. That's traditionally average or the full amount. Going above that means you're going to have more than you need. Now, I have seen a couple of leagues where 0.970, so 30% below average is actually perfect. Some leagues don't need 1.000. As you can see, this is our playthrough of the Desert Dreaming franchise we do live on Twitch, and right now we have on homers 0.923. So you don't have to do 1.000. You may find that to be too high as a number. Now, this is based off of, these totals that you're seeing on the screen right now are based off of MLB's 2021 season. So these are based off of live ball as of today. And that's why you can see there's a higher amount of strikeouts, decent amount of home runs, less triples, more doubles. And as you can tell also down below, right next to the BABIP, we have the league averages for batting average, on-base percentage, and slugging percentage. And you can actually compare that to real baseball and try to get it as close as possible if you'd like to. Also, you can have it automatically adjust these totals every single season for accuracy. That's one of the things we have for historical playthroughs. If you're doing a playthrough starting in 1900, there were not zero, but there were maybe 40 homers in that era. Not per player, per maybe the entire league. Most players would hit maybe 6 or 7 at the most, and that was for big power hitters. It wasn't until Babe Ruth came around and some other big players around his era when the homers started coming out in larger numbers and we finally got some of the stuff that looks more traditional today. But even baseball today is very different than, say, the 1980s or the 1940s. Every single era of baseball has been different. It's one of the greatest things about baseball. It's an ever-changing sport. So, if you want your modifiers to stay with the times, if you're doing a historical playthrough, make sure that the automatically adjust league totals modifiers for accuracy is turned on. You may also have a section in your historical section as well to be able to make an adjustment for that. I think that technically is not turned on by default, and I don't know if you find that here. Oh, there it is, yeah. League strategies when advancing to next season. So right there, you can do some stuff with that, and then I think that's in conjunction with the stats and AI section. But if this is at least turned on, that's the best one to be able to go for. You can also do stuff if you're doing minors or feeders, but that's a bit more advanced. We won't talk about that today. So, if you are seeing, like an example that's brought up by this ticket, this person was finding out that their home run hitters were not doing that good, and a lot of players just really weren't performing the way they expected them to. Now, if you're playing with the elites of the elites, you're playing with everybody who's been good for all time. Checking the modifiers here is your first and foremost thing you want to do. You want to get these numbers to a much more comfortable position. If you need to, you can select a year to base your totals off of. So if they expect MLB standard modern day ball, you'll want to select 2019, 2020. That will give you the immediate results that the person is looking for. You know, or your that'll fix the issue for you immediately. And you can actually do this for anything you want. If you change it, you can even see our numbers are going to shift slightly. Our modifiers are not. Our base numbers are going to. You can see our homers are now down to 4,909 compared to 2020 where they are at only 2,304. And it can change every single year. So if you're looking for, and of course that's because 2020 was also the half season. It was only 50 games, so it's, of course the numbers are going to be a bit skewed for that. So I guess my advice would be don't use 2020. I'm going to revert on that. Don't do 2020. Do 2019. You'll get the 6,776 home runs at that point. You'll be much more happier with that if you're looking for a modern day baseball era. Now, if you're looking to have more information about some other types of stuff you can modify, another example was that the pitchers were not being taken out, even after throwing 100 pitches and going way too deep into ball games. Now, you can do a couple different things. You can change pitcher stamina, how it affects whether or not a pitcher can go deep into a ball game. And that's what you can find right down here, right below our modifiers. Starting pitcher stamina and relief pitcher stamina. They are separate. We consider those separate types of staminas. And each one's going to be a little bit different in the length or the longevity that they can be used in a game. So if you want your starters to have less time, but you want your relievers to stay the same, just change the starting pitcher stamina modifier, put it down like around 0.950. And you will notice that stamina on pitchers expires quicker. They get pulled out a lot sooner. Alternatively, you can go over here to your general strategic tendencies, and you can make it faster for how starting pitchers are hooked or pulled from baseball games. So if you feel like as if, they're kind of left in a little bit too long and you don't really want to mess with their stamina per se, you want them to be able to go long in good games, but you want them to just kind of get pulled a little bit sooner, you might be more interested in having their hooks be a little bit faster. The problem with that is more likely than not, that also means that if they're having a bad game, they get pulled a lot sooner. Which is not exactly technically a bad thing, but if you're looking to have a starter go at least 5 or 6 innings, they might get pulled in the 3rd or 4th, which you don't want. So there's a balance between how much stamina they can really go through and how fast they want to get pulled. So that's up to you to make that decision. Play with it as you'd like. My recommendation is 3 or 4 on the negative side for the general strategic tendencies section, and then I would actually go down closer towards a 1.000 for the starting pitcher stamina. Maybe go down into like a 970 if you feel like that's still too much. If you want to go lower, you can. Also, if you're playing with historical players, those types of players go longer in games because their stamina is higher because that was just the style of baseball they played in. Modern baseball is very different, very more reliant upon relievers. Back in the old days, pitchers went 10, 11, 12, 13 innings if they could. If they had extra innings, they'd go the entire game. They had rubber arms. They could do it. So, unfortunately, if you're playing with the old players, they're going to have ridiculous staminas compared to, say, a German Marquez or Herman Marquez, of modern day baseball. So just be aware that may be a thing. Lastly, home runs. So we talked about this already. You can do home run modification right here in your modifiers. If you feel like homers are being really misrepresented or they're just way too low, this number is probably down in the hundreds and not in the thousands. So increase that number, and that should fix your situation altogether. Anything else I want to talk about for this whole entire page right here? You can affect a whole bunch of other things, such as the range and errors of your infielders. If you feel like as if they're making too many errors, you can make those effects down here. You can change those down here. Also, stolen bases. You can change how often the attempts are made and how successful the attempts are. So these are all just more of the little things you can tweak about your game. There are some other things in terms of like use of openers, pitcher stamina on the left side. If you want your pitcher stamina to have just more duration all the way through in terms of both relievers and starters, you can technically change that as well over there on the left side. So one more thing to add for that, unfortunately. One more little kink tier to all of your issues. But I hope you got some information out of this. Hope explains a little bit about how you can make tweaks and modifications to your leagues. Thank you.